Welcome everyone. Today we'll talk about disaster response and recovery in this short video. Before proceeding to understand what is our response and what is recovery, we need to understand what are we talking about in terms of risk. So we need to assess the risk. So let us talk about the building. In case if it is this building infrastructure or certain things that have been made unlivable or things have gone into under severe constraint due to the disaster. So we need to understand what is the assessment. Let us look at the building, the site of the building, where is it located, what kind of environment is it within this thing, what kind of building materials have been utilized, utilities thereof, where the plumbing is all about is coming in, electrification of the building, the security. We need to understand everything that the building comprises of and the periphery environment to it. So let us prioritize our risk on a scale of 1 to 5 if you want to look around it on 1 to scale, wherein the type of threat we need to understand multiplied by times of likelihood or times of value of losses. So the type of threat into likelihood of happening it into the catastrophic nature of the loss that can goes around it. So let's look into a main stack. Let's say vandalism, which is on a scale of 1 to 5 is quite extreme. On the scale of 4, very likely, probably you if you are looking at a very sensitive zone, likely to happen is 4 times out of every 5 probabilities, and loss is to a bare minimum. There are only losses to the property but nothing to the life. So we have scaled it on a marked it on 2 on a level of 1 to 5. So what does the score means? It means 4 into 4 is 16 in times 2 is 32. So that is the main stack of risk assessment is all about it. Now, prioritize risk. What happens if there is a likelihood of a water damage? 4 times on a scale of 5, it is 4, very likely again. And the loss is complete blockage of water. The water goes defunct. It is not anymore potable, drinkable. So the scale, if you times it out together out there, you will see a lot many differences that comes around here, and that is what we should be looking at. 4 times 4 is 16, 16 times 5 is 80%. Risk assessment, the conclusion of assessment should be known. What are your biggest risks? Take preventing actions to understand those risks, monitors those risks, alarm those risks as on when on file. The motto should be what should be the favorite good to the greatest good all the time, and that is what we are looking forward to it. What can we do to bring the greatest of good to every possible time that goes around here, and that needs to be understood time and again. Disaster plan, elements of disaster plan, quick reference guys. Procedure for immediate responses to any common disaster that we talk about it. If it is with the building, done with the security and the building infrastructures. Basic informations is the emergency phone numbers in terms of hospital, in terms of police, in terms of administration, the phone tree, the building proctors as they call, as in who can guide you to the best possible understanding of the facility, post evacuation meeting location, location disaster supply, list of vendors, flow plans with fire alarms is what we should be looking forward, and that is what is needs to be understood. So disaster plans, there are a list of responsibility that needs to be assigned to particular members of the disaster team. Now what are we looking into it? We're talking about irreplaceable material. What is it? If it is electricity, if it is water, is it irreplaceable? If there are certain staircases, is it irreplaceable? So priority number 2 would be materials essential to provide basic services or to the library of operations that goes around here by the law. Now we need to understand oxygen needs to be provided. If there is a constraint, water needs to be provided to the victims around there. Lives should be protected, given more priorities over property. Then comes the priority number 3, replaceable material like the core collection areas of excellence, materials of high research value, your documents, your research values. These are things that you need to pull it out, excavate altogether in case of things. Priority number 4 should be nice to have, let's say precious material, your money, your gold, but not essential. Priority number 5 is anything and everything that can be rescued, that can be evacuated, because it is at the end of the day, it's all required for having a modern life. Elements of disaster plan, disaster scale and recovery operation. Level 1 is emergencies, minor incidents that do not interrupt library operation, handled by a minimum of staff in less than 4 hours. Any damaged material that can be utilized then and there. So these are your disaster plan goes around it. For a small disaster, limited to a certain isolated areas, if you are going around it, let's say there's a damage of around 100 items, or a few people, which is numbering less than 1,000, you require few number of staff to excavate those things. The disruption, if this is a limited disaster, small area disaster, we should try to limit it within a day and try to recover it, respond it, probably maintain the operation within a days or so put together. Elements of disaster plan on a medium scale. Now, this is wherein we are looking into a bit of a large scale of an inventory that goes wrong, large scale of property that goes wrong, a number of people that has been affected. There might be a few people who have not have been injured severely, probably crucially, but they have been there. Now, this is where we might be requiring outside help, like the medicine, the medical doctors, the evacuation team, the disaster management teams from outside, other than our own resources. And that is what we look into it. Now, this is what we will be talking around here. Right. So level number 4 is major large scale areas where there is not only loss of life, but also of that of property. Now, what are the plans? We should have the requisite emails, the web IDs, the phone numbers of every person to be contacted. Facilities or local contact, state contact, national contact, vendors, emergency, and so on and so forth. These are what we should be looking into is vendors or suppliers. What do we have on the site? Who can help us? How do we need to fill those needs? Can there be any other people who can work around it? Be it the hospital, be it the police, be it the administration, be it somebody from the government. Establish connection. If you require to infuse cash, put it. Rental agencies, as in to evacuate uh, the people who have been affected, physically injured, or they are undergoing some medical constraint, they need to be evacuated from the site to the hospitals. How do you go around it? So this is where the local services can go around. They can help you remove everything, evacuate all the injured peoples. Response time should be within 24 hours, should be across it. Otherwise, what, how we will able to manage the show? Then comes the selecting of our vendors, as the case might be. Do we have those people who are in touch, those who have met with the disaster, those who have worked under certain constraint? Do you have that kind of experiences working with you? Do the conservative providers, services, administration help you enact, respond, and probably reflect of what has happened and rebuild the construction? So that is what we should be looking forward to it. Disaster plan. Elements of disaster plan is the general guidelines, the packouts as on when on basis, recovery of the mold material, vacuum freezing, drying, vacuum drying, anything that goes around here so that it lets our life come back to normal from the disruption. Elements of disaster plan, procedure of disaster recovery, recovery from fire disaster, clearing and burning of material, scoot damages, heat damages, smoke damages, fire information sheets, as the case might be, fact sheet of portable fire extinguisher. So these are things that can come around in case if it is a building, fire can get it's inflammable, right? It just can be inflammable. There can be certain sites which are which might have something called untoward accident altogether during crisis, during disaster, and that is the thing that we need to prevent. So we need to have fire extinguisher, we need to understand what are smoke detectors, we need to have a proper evacuation plan. Disaster plan, the procedure and specification of rehabilitation, so that is what is to be done. Post disaster procedures are disaster report form, procedure for testing the disaster plan as on when on basis. The actual response, how do we go around about disaster? The scope of disaster determine whether it's on a low scale, medium scale, or on a broad scale, because that will define whether it's only properties that has been harmed, whether it's a property and mix of life. Probably people have lost a limb here and there, they are in severe medical condition, or there is both loss of life and property. Timing of the disaster, probably at which part of the day, which part of the week, which part of the season, if you're looking into it in a year times, the timing will determine what kind of intervention is required, part of the facility and collection affected. staff available for the resources then and there, and that is what we look to it, available of supplies and equipment then and there. Disaster response, the speed and the manner in disaster response is often critical. The quick response will only eliminate the spread of the disaster, it will curtail the crisis altogether, but a delayed response will only magnify the disaster over a period of time. So that is what we need to do to understand recovery, rehabilitation, and the final outcome. Disaster response activities, what are they all about it? We are talking about heating, ventilation, air conditioning working, HVAC working? Yes, no. If it is working, why? If it is not working, why? We need to understand, control the emergencies then and there, increase ventilation. Proper ventilation, proper spread of oxygen is required for anybody, be it any of the life or be it even the properties. Turning on the air condition if possible to retard molds, safety, security problem, arrange for environmental testing, and continue monitoring as often as possible. Assess the situation. Now, once the crisis has happened, once the disaster has struck, post that event, you need to assess what has happened, what went wrong, what were the structural level that goes around it, the level of damages that we are looking into it, provide particular evidences in terms of photographs, in front of documentation, review service areas and other patrons accessible area, review staff offices, then there. Estimate time of reoccupation and the need of relocation as on when on basis, and that needs to be understood time and again. Perform initial recovery preparation, identify the staging area, setting up of the command center as on when on basis if necessary, activation of the disaster plan thereby. Disaster recovery includes every operation, everything after the initial response. The initial responses might be nature, but the recovery should be well planned out, including the restoration, collection, services, and bringing life to normal as the case might be. So, what are we looking into it as far as disaster recovery is concerned? It is all about normalcy, bringing continuity to the services in terms of references, citations, in everything that life wants to go around it, accessibility to the internet, access to the other patron services, and things like that. Restoration of collection, what are we looking into it? The types of material, the types of life, the furniture, the living standard, the building, the comfort level, the status of the online databases, record of holding, everything should be in proper sense, should make sense. Typical information for everybody. The insurance should be paid for. Decide for the immediate action plan in terms of salvaging the priorities. Instruction for special format, availability of supplies and equipment, vendor and in-house recovery as the case might be. What are we talking about recovery as per se? Now we are talking about any options, any process material, any material for that means it, materials as low as which is required for daily life, materials as low as which are essential but not vital. Let's say your currencies, your gold, which are materials which are as important as essentials, like say water, air, oxygen, everything that goes around it, material which are important and critical, like the life of a person, the life of any animals, and so on and so forth. So you need to understand what we are looking into it as far as recovery is concerned. So can everything come back to normal life, normalcy? That is what is important. If required, ask for interventions from the expert and the consultant thereof. Disaster recovery is a time of recovery may be as short as possible, if possible within few hours, because the more time you consume in recovery, the more the disaster spread, the crisis is not being able to mitigate it. That is what we need to understand. So whatever the damage is, the collection will never be the same. So what are we looking as follow-up activities to mitigate another disaster? A disaster which is similar to what has actually happened. It might be modification in your plan, changes in policies, procedures, revisions of disaster management team, retraining of staff, modification of facility, assessment of risk management needs, review of insurance needs. Disaster plan testing. Now, what are we looking as far as a test plan? Now, this is again that hypothetical situation that we talk about it. A disaster has happened, similar disasters are waiting to happen, maybe in a different kind of scale, different kind of manner, maybe bigger, maybe smaller. Can we identify the scope? Objective format of such disaster, determine the type of test that is required, set time, duration for your responses, recovery, schedule, unschedule, identify participants, key participants who are going to help you, volunteers use, or probably assess the situation and help you in restoring the crisis, establishing, reporting, and evaluating the process and anticipated outcome as the case might be. And how do we go across it? We can go across with the checklist testing, as in what is happening, are all fire retardants are present, is the due phone numbers been actually been visible and is accessible by everyone in the occupants. Short plan drill, if we can have in terms of fire drill, tabletop exercises, pre-planned exercises, full disaster plan. With this, I come to an end of this presentation. Thank you for watching this video till the end.